dangerous mineral, the more it begins to tremble. After a few moments, the warrior falls to his knees and says that he cannot carry out this command because it is too dangerous. He starts crying and says that he actually lost all his money and came here to pay off his debts, but he doesn't want to die. Rodrigo looks at this spectacle and says that he has not met a more pitiful person than this warrior for a long time. Larry looks at Rodrigo and realizes that he is much tougher than him, and he couldn't compete with him even on his best days. After this, he approaches him, saying that he is just a fire mage, but would like to join their party, asking if they can accept him. Caesar asks his comrade if he said anything like that, to which he replies that he did indeed say those words. Rodrigo turns towards Larry and asks him to come closer, after which Larry immediately falls to his knees in front of him. He declares that he is ready to give his life for him, when suddenly his face is met with a powerful kick from Rodrigo. He asks him if Larry really thought there would be a place for him, since he would never take trash like him into the ranks. Caesar states that Larry is a pathetic traitor. He is going to die anyway, and he will simply give his death at least some value. Caesar continues to beat Larry and says that he won't leave here alive anyway, and he will just turn him into a living dead man for the sake of these crystals. Chester realizes they're in for a serious adventure, while Vincent quietly returns and switches places with his double. The young bard begins to get nervous and tries to understand what to do in such a situation, going over a variety of options in his head. Vincent notices the hesitation in the bard's heart and places his hand on his shoulder, advising him not to do anything stupid. Immediately after this, he asks him to leave all this to him, and wait here without making any sudden movements that could lead to unforeseen events. Immediately after this, he wonders how dangerous collecting these crystals could be. The irritated wizard, together with his friend, asks him what kind of clown has just appeared to ask stupid questions. Vincent decides to ignore his interlocutors, and silently heads towards the pile of crystals to take one of them. Meanwhile, the other participants quickly retreat to avoid being caught in the trap. Hiding away, they call him a bastard and say he should warn them before taking the crystals. Nothing happens, and the members of the battle group wonder if this young man was able to outwit even death itself, or if the trap simply broke. Vincent muses that even if this is a death trap, they will be lucky, and if he fulfills all the requirements, then it will only be earlier, or nothing will happen at all. He continues to collect a large amount of crystals, ignoring the fearful hunters from the battle group watching him. Rodrigo notes that the trap was not activated despite multiple attempts to take the crystals, and suggests that the man's luck is above 60. The wizard says he doesn't know of anyone who can have such a high luck score at level 1. Another group member approaches the crystals and says that there is only one reasonable explanation, which is that the trap has broken. He takes the crystals and turns to his comrade, saying that nothing really happened, not noticing the flash in the darkness. This flash results in a bolt of energy that instantly pierces the head of this fighter who acted too carelessly. His lifeless body with a broken head immediately falls to the ground, instilling horror in all the other people who were watching him. Rodrigo, meanwhile, indifferently says that the high luck is probably somehow connected with Vincent's profession, which was changed in the abyss. He also wonders if anyone would waste their attribute points on something as useless as luck. He also remembers that his original plan was to turn everyone into corpses that he could use later. But now everything has changed. He states that he only needs Vincent, and the rest of the cannon fodder squad can simply be finished off. The warrior steps back and says that their chances are 0, since their opponents are the Blood Oath squad. Larry, who has already suffered a fair amount of damage, cowardly thinks that he has no choice. He grabs the crystal and runs away, hoping that he will be able to get out of this abyss and sell the crystal for a lot of money. Vincent turns to the side and wonders why Larry is running away, adding that they will take these opponents with their numbers. The warrior states that they are now outnumbered, but Vincent is not discouraged and says that they have enough people to defeat them. Suddenly, one of the fighters in the combat group hears a strange chirping sound and asks his comrade if he hears this strange noise. The warrior waves his sword and says that he doesn't understand anything, after which the wizard looks up. Quite quickly, he discovers strange humanoid spiders that are rapidly approaching the battlefield. These monsters assume a threatening pose and prepare to attack the members of the battle group under Vincent's orders. Chester says that they are now caught between a rock and a hard place. Vincent reassures him that he picked up the monsters along the way. Immediately after, he activates his enhanced perceptive vision skills to assess his opponents. One of the biggest threats is the enemy necromancer, who is level 20 and has serious skills. The next most powerful enemy is the enemy berserker, who is level 17 and wields a two-handed sword. Among other things, there are 2 enemy hunters here who are level 18 and can shoot a bow. Additionally, there is an enemy paladin here who can provide the rest of the team with protection and some damage. Vincent reflects that his gut tells him that he won't have any particular problems fighting these opponents. But there is one catch. Looking at Rodrigo, he gets a notification that his skills cannot be determined because this enemy is close to him in strength. Vincent realizes that, apparently, the level of this man is not much lower than his, and maybe even higher. Caesar states that if the level of these subordinate monsters is below 10, then it is even possible to resort to their help, since they are useless. Vincent says that now the plans have changed, and if they want to survive, they must follow Larry's example. The warrior understands that he is being led by a complete idiot who decided to sacrifice himself to stop these opponents. But he really has no choice. Having thought it all over carefully, he sets out on the run to save his miserable life and try to get rich again another time. Vincent also turns to Chester and says that he probably had his own motives for going into this abyss. But if he wants to live, he must escape from here. Chester looks at the protagonist with a very anxious look and promises him that he will never forget him. After this, he also follows the advice of his comrade and runs away into the darkness so that these vile hunters will never find him again. However, his skill and extremely low luck do not allow him to calmly leave this room, which is why he steps on another trap. The pressure plate that Chester steps on at full speed causes a powerful collapse that blocks the exit for him and the warrior who was with him. The warrior asks him what the hell happened and what he stepped on this time, calling him a stupid idiot along the way. Chester apologizes, saying that ever since they entered the abyss, nothing but bad luck has been fallen upon them, and he still doesn't know why. Meanwhile, the paladin rushes forward to smash his opponent with a powerful blow of his hammer. However, the improved version of the spider is preparing to fight this enemy and withstand all the tests. The paladin's strike hits its target and knocks the spider aside, as it has too much momentum. The arrogant warrior claims that he will be able to knock out these opponents with just a few blows of his renowned hammer. However, this judgment turns out to be premature, as the spiders have some tricks up their sleeves that they decide to use. One of the spiders immediately shoots a web straight into the face of the presumptuous paladin to briefly immobilize him. The enemy paladin tries to remove the web from his face in order to at least somehow continue the fight. However, in his attempts, he misses one very important detail, and when he finally notices it, it is already too late. The thing is, Vincent decides not to hesitate and immediately takes advantage of the opportunity to knock out one of the opponents. Luckily for the paladin, he manages to block the attack and states that Vincent's damage is too low to deal to him. A moment later, he ducks to protect his face from a razor-sharp dagger. With a sweeping motion of his shield, he asks Vincent how he likes the protection of a true paladin. Vincent reflects on the fact that his spiders are at level 10, enough to even the odds, but not enough to win. He understands that the Blood Oath group are quite serious opponents who cannot be defeated so easily. However, he manages to land a few hits on the paladin's legs to weaken him. He decides to rush forward again to take advantage of the opportunity that has arisen. The paladin falls to the ground, but is immediately covered by two archers preparing to eliminate Vincent. The protagonist notices their intentions and dodges 2 arrows in time that would otherwise have finished him off. The hunters look at Vincent in surprise and wonder if he was really able to dodge such a swift attack. Unable to believe that anyone could dodge their shots, they decide to try again, assuming that they simply missed. One of the archers shoots towards Vincent, but he prepares to block the arrow with his hand. Waiting for the right moment, he delivers a powerful blow with his dagger and cuts the arrow in half. The archers watch in amazement, trying to understand how some boy could cut an arrow with a dagger. Vincent decides to immediately respond to the offenders by using the Big Bang skill. Before the archers can even comprehend what has happened, the ground beneath their feet begins to rapidly heat up and shake. The next second, a powerful explosion is heard, causing tectonic cracks and a strong shockwave. Looking at Vincent, the rest of the squad realizes that he is a tough nut to crack and will take some work. Meanwhile, the enemy berserker engages one of the spiders and wins a decisive victory thanks to his advantage. Swinging his sword, he cuts through everything that gets in his way, mercilessly destroying the unfortunate spiders. Having dealt with the first obstacle, he realizes that he only has a little time left before he can destroy Chester and the other warrior. Gripping his sword tightly in his hands, he rushes forward, preparing to cut down his targets with one blow. Chester tries to stop him, saying that they can come to an agreement and do without unnecessary bloodshed, while the warrior believes that words will be unnecessary. At the last moment, he knocks Chester down, takes his place and puts up a shield to block the attack. Immediately after this, he claims that they were unable to escape precisely because of Chester, after which he calls him an idiot. He also adds that if Chester wants to live, he must be able to fight, because in this cruel world there is no other way. The enemy berserker continues to try to destroy his opponents, and the warrior realizes that he needs to act faster. He manages to put his shield forward again, but this time the blow has much more inertia and immediately crumples it significantly. The force of the blow is so great that the warrior is thrown aside, and his shield turns into a useless trinket. The warrior feels the serious damage his body has received and tries to cough. The sword he was clutching in his hands falls to the ground and impales itself on the rocky ground next to Chester. The berserker takes a few steps forward, preparing to finish off an opponent who is in a vulnerable position. Nevertheless, the warrior rises to his feet, preparing to fight for his life to the last. He chuckles and states that he shouldn't have looked into the abyss, because his end was inevitable. Realizing that he won't succeed against such a strong opponent, he asks to finish him off quickly and painlessly. The berserker smiles, realizing that he would gladly fulfill such a wish, and prepares for execution. He rushes forward, swinging his giant sword, while the warrior does not even try to block the attack, realizing its futility. At the last moment, the berserker's body suddenly begins to be shackled by strange magic, preventing him from moving. Barely looking around, he guesses that, apparently, the damned bard standing behind is to blame for everything. Chester, meanwhile, frantically goes through all the spells he has, trying to find the right one. He reports that thanks to his skills he delayed the berserker, but the warrior claims that this spell acts on an area, and he also fell under the effect. Vincent turns to look at the strange sight, and wonders what his friend is doing instead of running away. Meanwhile, the necromancer standing behind him says that if Vincent has some hidden ability, then its powers will end sooner or later. Vincent notes that summoning magic does use up a lot of energy, and since he summoned a clone earlier, it's almost all used up. To cope with this situation, he turns to his inventory for suitable means. The proud necromancer watches his opponent closely and notices that for some reason he is busy drinking from some glass. At first he tries to find out what Vincent is doing, but then states that he doesn't care, because it won't restore mana anyway. After this, he states that his profession is one of the strongest, as the corpses he resurrects will fight forever. Vincent continues to drink the mana recovery item and is surprised by such impressive skills that his opponent has. Moments later, he reports that his mother has been fully restored and is preparing to continue fighting. As soon as the dead approach him, he calls upon his deity, saying that all the dead should rest in peace. The deity of recycling immediately rushes forward, capturing the reanimated corpses and absorbing them into its abyss. The necromancer wonders what the hell is going on here and where his corpses that were just here went. Vincent doesn't answer this question, rushing forward to deal with this enemy as well. The necromancer doesn't have time to react to such an attack and gets punched right in the face, causing him to lose consciousness. Thus, Vincent gets rid of a huge amount of headache, and all that remains is to finish off the berserker and Rodrigo. Caesar says that his opponent has very interesting abilities, and now he understands what attracted him to him at the drink stand. Vincent says it would be great if they could make a little money or go home, but the fact that they're recruiting people as cannon fodder changes everything. He states that such a practice is too immoral, and he cannot let them go after what they have done. Caesar asks him if he really thought that, having potential, he had the right to contradict him, adding that they are all his property. He says that right now he will remind him how this cruel world works, after which he hears Chester's screams. Chester takes out his sword and approaches the paralyzed berserker, saying that he is just a handyman and would not like to participate in this bloodshed. Caesar, with a smile on his face, says that apparently cannon fodder will not come out of here under any circumstances. The warrior turns to his comrade and tells him that he should not listen to him, but simply raise his sword and finish off his opponent. Chester starts to get cowardly, saying that he can only strengthen others, but he himself is not capable of killing a monster, much less a person. Caesar uses this situation as an example and says that one side will always be destroyed by the other. Vincent chuckles and says that he doesn't understand a single word of this stupid bravado, adding that he has a different point of view. He states that everyone has the right to enter the abyss and come out alive, no matter what level of power they possess. Caesar laughs and calls such naivety too unforgivable to survive in this cruel world. Immediately after this, he rushes forward while Vincent blocks his attack. However, this is the wrong tactic. Caesar's strength is at an extremely high level, causing any blow he makes to have incredible momentum, capable of crushing mountains. Vincent nevertheless survives this attack calmly, but he understands that he is dealing with a person with incredible strength. Caesar continues to develop his offensive, and the protagonist is surprised by the incredible speed that his opponent has developed in a matter of seconds. Rodrigo rushes forward to deny his opponent the opportunity to recover from the damage he has received. Vincent, however, manages to dodge this attack thanks to his unrivaled agility, which he has developed. Caesar smugly declares that his fist is invincible, meaning he can deal with absolutely any opponent. At this time, The warrior asks Chester what he is waiting for, still hoping that his ally will find the courage to finish off the berserker. The control effect wears off and the berserker turns around, rewarding the cowardly bard with a powerful blow to the face for his indecision. Chester falls to the ground, unable to stay on his feet from such a serious blow. He tries to get up, feeling blood running down his face from the serious injuries. The berserker prepares to cut down his opponent with a powerful blow of his sword, and punish him for his slowness and indecision. The warrior once again comes to the rescue in this situation, grabbing the berserker by the body so that he stops his blow. He also shouts at his ally to do at least something to win this battle, realizing that he won't be able to hold off such a beast for long. The berserker throws the warrior away from himself with a sweeping sword strike that instantly reaches the target and deals devastating damage. In his death throes, he is surprised that Barto did nothing, despite the fact that he had many opportunities. Finally, he asks him why he volunteered to be the leader if he is so weak and unable to make any decision. Chester says in a plaintive voice that he volunteered to be the leader simply because he thought that if he did, he wouldn't have to fight. With these words, he falls to his knees and says that in fact he is not a strong opponent at all. After this, he tries to beg his teacher and says that he is a noob, so he asks for mercy. He recalls that other players told him that he was incapable of dealing damage, but that he could greatly buff others. Unfortunately, his absolute incompetence didn't help even with this, as he couldn't choose the right target to amplify it. It was because of this that he was driven away everywhere, called a pathetic nobody, and a newbie with whom there was no point in communicating. This situation drove him into the depths of despair, which is why he found himself in the position he is in now. Caesar found him, realizing that such people were ready to do anything, and asked if he had any work. Chester then admitted that he was a third-level bard, hoping that someone would not know about his past and take him with them. Caesar was the very man who invited him, offering him a job, hiding his true intentions. Vincent, meanwhile, continues to fight Caesar, who once again throws him onto the stone floor, causing him to leave a large furrow behind. Rodrigo wants to finish what he started, and rushes forward to finish off the protagonist with one powerful blow of his hand. He shouts that he is using a martial arts technique that causes continuous physical damage to the point of impact, and claims that if the opponent tries to use magic, they will die even faster. Caesar smugly states that this explosion is an indication of combat skills that would cripple even the most powerful mage. Vincent notes that his opponent is moving too fast, and realizes that he needs to make even faster decisions to survive. He attempts to evade, but Caesar mockingly asks if he really still has hope of getting out of here alive. Vincent wonders if the man loses any blood when he uses this skill and comes to the conclusion that he must have some kind of weakness. After a few moments, he freezes in place, realizing that this insight has given him one bright idea. Without thinking twice, he returns to the battle and turns to Chester, saying that he has one very important request. A moment later, he takes a serious blow from Rodrigo and is again thrown back several dozen meters. It turns out that he stops right next to a bewildered Chester, who still doesn't know what to do. Vincent tells him that it is useless to hope for mercy from others, just because he is a weakling. He also claims that he dreamed about this earlier because he was disappointed with his weakness, just like Chester. Remembering himself in the past, he states that he was very weak and capable of very little, but this did not break him. Vincent states that he does not give up because there is no need to be afraid of one's weakness, because there are things much more terrible. The protagonist tries to inspire the bard, inspiring him to a moral uplift after what he heard. To do this, he says that you need to be afraid of your own cowardice, and the biggest fear is the fear of losing heart and not coping. Vincent says that he will never be afraid to lose, because if he does, he will die anyway. However, he emphasizes that it was the mindset that giving up was not an option that helped him reach the heights he is at now. Time after time, he fought monsters that were an order of magnitude stronger than him. But thanks to his persistence and a little bit of luck, he was able to emerge victorious. Vincent says that when he gathered all his will into a fist and took the first step, he learned one very important thing. From his point of view, deep down he always knew that he should be on top of this world because he deserved it. He also adds that even when he was a weak garbage man, his ambition did not fade away, and he did everything possible to achieve results. Chester asks in surprise if he really wants to become the king of this world. He also realizes that if he doesn't get stronger, he will die, and understands that compared to ridicule, it was better to simply disguise himself and run away from fights. Determination begins to overwhelm him, and he says that he wants to become stronger and pump up his spirits so much that he will never give up again. He notes that his third level is no match for his opponent's stats, as he will not be able to defeat him under any circumstances. He also states that he is now very interested and will simply let the opponent make a few attacks. However, Chester suddenly throws away his sword. The berserker is surprised by such a strange maneuver, and continues to watch the weak bard, who still does not pose a threat. Chester, meanwhile, instead of grabbing his sword again, decides to resort to a more original way to deal with the enemy. Grabbing his microphone, he decides to use his poetic lyricism skill to further empower his allies. The berserker continues to watch what is happening, not realizing how serious a danger the bard can pose in such a situation. Rodrigo also underestimates his opponent, wondering what the hell is going on, and whether they seriously expect to win with the power of song. Chester confidently declares that he is the best amplifier in the world, after which Vincent feels a surge of energy. The system notifies him that while under the influence of inspiration, all damage he causes increases by 15%, and his defense and speed increase by the same amounts. At that moment, he decides to summon Blood Nightmare while the buff is still in effect, so that his plan is as effective as possible. A strange liquid pours out of his body, which immediately rushes to another place to carry out a surprise attack. Bloody Nightmare decides to materialize behind the berserker to surprise him and take him by surprise. Once the transformation is complete, it is too late for the berserker to dodge, as he is too clumsy. The Bloody Nightmare himself decides not to waste a single second and immediately entangles his opponent with tentacles. Chester watches in amazement as Bloody Nightmare dispatches his opponent, leaving him no chance. Immediately after this, he turns his gaze to the real Vincent to make sure that he is okay. Rodrigo attacks again, wanting to finish off his left opponent, but this time Vincent dodges again. The first attack is followed by a series of additional blows, but all of them miss their target. Vincent speculates that due to his powerful magic, he has very fast regeneration, which allows him to fight indefinitely. When he gets the right moment to attack, he rushes forward using a berserk skill called Blood Splash. He increases his damage to continue the fight, and they clash with their opponent again in a brutal battle. At one point, he even manages to find a window to make an attack and throw a dagger. Rodrigo takes some damage from this, and wonders what happened to his armor if some lowly scavenger could hurt him with a normal dagger. Vincent muses that Blood Splash ignores enemy armor, but Rodrigo's martial arts are still a factor. He understands that this fight needs to be ended as soon as possible, since he still lacks experience in close combat. Caesar says that he finds this fight incredibly interesting, and smiles, enjoying the fact that he has met a worthy opponent for the first time. At this time, he rushes forward in order to make a quick turn, thereby getting a window to strike the opponent's body with his fists. However, his plan fails, and Caesar wonders how he can lose to some garbage man after 20 years of practice. Several seconds pass before he finds the right moment to punch Vincent in the face, noting that the difference in strength is too great. He also states that those people who have developed martial arts can change their profession to the King of Destruction or Street Fighter. Vincent continues to fight despite the serious blows he receives, thanks to his high regeneration. During the next dash, they cross their fists, creating a powerful shockwave that scatters everyone around. Vincent feels his bones begin to rattle, but regeneration keeps them from crumbling to dust. Rodrigo loudly shouts how he hates weakness, stating that this is why he has focused all his attention on strength. Given a minute, he unleashes another lightning-fast, heaven-shattering strike to send the protagonist flying. When Vincent collides with a solid surface, he causes a powerful explosion that hides him from others for a period of time. However, it turns out that he was able to survive this catastrophic fall, but his clothes were seriously damaged. Caesar says that his opponent's suffering is very stupid, since by doing so he only prolongs his defeat. Vincent asks the system to add all unallocated points to his strength to match his opponent. The system reports that 176 points have just been added to his strength, and Vincent feels an instant boost to his body. Caesar looks at his opponent in surprise, and wonders where he got so many unallocated points from. Vincent, meanwhile, quickly analyzes his body and discovers that his muscle mass has increased significantly. Caesar doesn't pay much attention to this and rushes forward, saying that such a boost will not affect anything. Vincent, at this point, is thinking that he is still lagging behind in martial arts technique, but he believes that this should be enough to compensate for the gaps. Rushing forward, he realizes that at least he can now land a proper blow on his opponent. Caesar remains as nonchalant as possible and prepares to clash fists with his enemy again. A few seconds later, their blows touch again, creating a powerful shockwave. However, this time the advantage is clearly on Vincent's side due to brute force. This way, he gains much more momentum than his opponent and throws him aside, causing serious damage to his arm in the process. Rodrigo Caesar looks at his mangled arm and wonders how some young man could increase the damage of his blows so dramatically. Chester also watches his comrade, realizing that he has become incredibly strong in just a matter of seconds. Vincent decides not to give in to his opponent for a second and rushes forward again to finish him off. Caesar still hasn't had time to recover from what happened and receives another powerful blow right to the face. Vincent prepares to finish off his opponent and says he won't leave a single wet spot on him. This situation forces the antagonist to delve into the traumatic memories that made him the callous and secretive person he is now. He remembers the day he was designated as cannon fodder and was supposed to be expendable. During those times, he also had to clean the equipment of his superiors, who were members of the Lionheart Hunters Guild. The elders insisted that if someone wanted to join their ranks, he had to prove his ability. After some time, such an opportunity presented itself to Rodrigo, as a giant monster appeared in front of them. Caesar reasoned that if he could prove his worth, he could rise to a higher position in the hierarchy and gain access to benefits. His overconfidence played a cruel joke on him in some ways, but thanks to it, he was also able to inflict serious damage on the monster. However, after stunning the monster with his fists, he thought that it wasn't that difficult, which inevitably caused him to lose his guard. In a place like the Abyss, such actions are deadly and have already killed many fighters. The monster recovered faster than expected and dealt a devastating attack on Rodrigo. The young man was trampled into the rock and suffered such severe injuries that people usually die on the spot. His lower jaw was shattered, 8 ribs were broken, his heart was pierced through and his spleen and kidneys were damaged. Replacing all these organs required a huge amount of crystals. The scientists who saved him said that technology now makes it possible to extract valuable cells from the monsters of the Abyss and transplant them into the human body. One of the scientists told him that thanks to this, Rodrigo survived, but became half human, half monster, due to the similarity of DNA. However, by doing so, he proved that he was worthy of joining the Lionheart squad as a full member. However, not even a few days had passed before he found himself captured by a monster who offered to become his extra hand and watchdog. Rodrigo asked where the rest of his team had gone, happily accepting such gifts. The monster replied that these useless rats were not strong enough, and he dealt with them. That day, Caesar learned a very important lesson. This world is extremely cruel and can swallow a person whole. This instilled in him the idea that if he couldn't show his worth, then he was nothing more than trash that needed to be gotten rid of. After a few moments, the unbreakable effect is triggered, greatly increasing Rodrigo's defense and increasing his speed. Vincent is very surprised by such a sharp transformation of his opponent's body and tries to understand what is going on here. He also wonders how Rodrigo managed to recover so much strength, and because of this, he misses a blow. Caesar puts a tremendous amount of force into this punch, so he instantly knocks Vincent out of his way. Only by some miracle does the main character manage to maintain his balance and recover from this blow relatively quickly. Caesar states that the hallmark of magic crystals is a rich, seething magical force. He also says that during the blood moon, thanks to the transplanted organs of monsters, he can feed on the power of these magical crystals. Arrogance gets the better of him for a while, and he claims that he can become even stronger than the Abyss boss for a short time. Meanwhile, the system informs Vincent that Rodrigo Caesar has now been promoted to the rank of Abyss boss and must be defeated. Vincent is surprised by such a drastic change and wonders what happened to his opponent's body. Caesar offers Vincent to surrender, promising a quick and merciful death at his hand in that case. Vincent realizes that making a deal with the devil is a sure way to the grave, as they never keep their word. Caesar, meanwhile, advises him to let go of his human body and become unkillable. At the same moment, he throws several heavy stones at the main character, which he only miraculously dodges. Vincent turns as Caesar speaks of fully accepting the cost of this power. Vincent tries to keep an eye on his opponent so that at the decisive moment he does not become a victim of his sharp blow. Unfortunately, it is too late, and Caesar accelerates to incredible speeds that are impossible to dodge. Chester begins to literally tremble with fear, realizing that he is faced with a force the likes of which he has never seen. He reflects that they are undoubtedly no match for high-level players, and even Vincent, who turned out to be much stronger, cannot stand up to Rodrigo. He still has his unbreakable power, which lies in his monstrous essence. Caesar begins to prematurely celebrate his victory, saying that in order to win, he had to show his ugly side. After that, he calms down a little and turns his gaze to Chester, who certainly can't cause him any problems. He talks about how Chester failed the mission he was entrusted with, which means he will be the last piece of cannon fodder to see it. He immediately rushes forward and says that as a reward he will give him a heroic death. Chester stops his opponent and says that if he dies anyway, he wants to tell him something. Rodrigo comes closer and grabs Chester by the throat, telling him that he already talks too much. Lifting him off the ground, he asks him if he has any last wishes. Chester does not deny himself originality and says that he wants to leave this abyss alive and unharmed. He also says that Rodrigo's assumption is fundamentally wrong. Chester claims that he is not the last of the cannon fodder left alive. An unsuspecting Caesar turns around and sees a strange liquid gradually rising from the ground. Vincent, who was able to avoid fatal damage, says that thanks to this bard, he bought himself some time and drank a potion of mana restoration. Vincent also says that Rodrigo's weaknesses are not noticeable at first glance, so he relied on his comrade. Caesar wonders if he only killed Bloody Nightmare, trying to figure out when he managed to switch places with him. Vincent says that the Berserker's combat skills greatly increased his strength in a short period of time. But after that, there is a period of exhaustion. Vincent also talks about how even Caesar, who has a body that blurs the lines between man and monster, must pay a price for his power. Rodrigo doesn't understand this philosophical concept and asks him what the abyss has to do with this conflict. The explanation for the protagonist's words comes very quickly, and Caesar quickly begins to feel strange sensations. Looking at his hands, he discovers that they are very quickly beginning to mutate and take on unpleasant shapes. Chester decides not to waste a single second and immediately moves to a safer place. Rodrigo feels a surge of incredible anger, after which he turns an enraged gaze to Vincent. Anger continues to take over his body and mind, as all monsters are insane maniacs. In a thirst for blind revenge, for no apparent reason, he rushes forward to tear Vincent to pieces with his claws. Vincent continues to dominate his opponent with incredible agility and dodges all blows. Thanks to his skills, he seems to dance around his opponent, looking for his weak points along the way. After a quick analysis of his opponent's movements, he realizes that the changes in his body have significantly increased his speed. However, this speed is still not enough to match Vincent's performance. But the situation is becoming more dangerous. As he continues to dodge one blow after another, he hopes that he can reach some weapon that will help him in the fight. Chester decides to come to the rescue in this situation and calls out to the protagonist, hoping to attract his attention. Finding the right moment, he throws the dagger at him, trying to give it maximum speed. A split second later, the dagger stops a few centimeters from Vincent's face, who manages to intercept it with his hand. Vincent finally gets the advantage and the opportunity to break through his opponent's heavy defense. Rodrigo, meanwhile, continues to slowly mutate, turning into an increasingly ugly version of himself. Vincent makes another evasive maneuver, simultaneously delivering a powerful attack with his dagger to the opponent's back and neck. He lands on the ground quite gracefully, without any particular discomfort, while Rodrigo feels a lot of pain. Gritting his teeth, he wonders if every hit he takes suddenly becomes a critical hit. Vincent tries to irritate his opponent by saying that he is still too strong for him just because he added a few points of agility. Caesar immediately rushes forward, declaring that Vincent will be very sorry for angering him with his empty chatter. He also claims to be a superior being who looks down on the ants like him who try to oppose him. However, Vincent remains unimpressed by such statements and asks if Caesar really thinks he is someone special. Charging his fists with the power of fire, he says that in his eyes, Caesar is just another pathetic monster that needs to be destroyed. Rodrigo suffers serious injuries, which further fuels the rage raging in his mind. Following the endless rage, the mutation process accelerates and his face begins to transform again. A few more seconds pass, and he takes on a completely inhuman appearance, so that no one will be able to recognize the former Rodrigo in him. Vincent acknowledges this tragic fact, realizing that the monster has completely taken over his opponent, and now he cannot be saved. He asks Caesar if he can hear the call of the abyss, which is now calling him now that he has become a full-fledged monster. Rodrigo does not answer this question, and only shouts furiously that his opponent must die as quickly as possible. A moment later, he is overcome with madness and says that he has proven his worth and is not cannon fodder, and therefore does not have to die. Chester says that Caesar has simply gone crazy, which means this is their chance to win. Vincent looks closely at his opponent and realizes that he has a much more elegant solution. To understand why Vincent is reacting so strangely, you only need to go back a few minutes to when Rodrigo first changed his form. Vincent appeared behind Chester and warned him that his body was being absorbed by the Blood Nightmare in order to create a clone. At that moment, he received a special mission, according to which he must defeat Rodrigo without killing him, and receive a rare reward. Vincent thought that the madman would not leave here alive, and even his own team members would not let him go just like that. Disappearing into thin air, he told Chester to do whatever he could to distract the enemy for at least 5 seconds. Returning to the present, Vincent realizes that this enemy really does not need to be killed, and can be dealt with in a much more elegant way. Watching Caesar continue to mutate, he calmly turns back and says that monsters belong to the abyss and cannot leave it. Caesar goes into a bloody frenzy and loses all interest in his goals, while Vincent declares that the abyss welcomes such people with open arms. From his point of view, anyone who has given up their humanity ends up in the abyss, as those are the rules. He also says that he has heard more than once about monsters going berserk during the blood moon and losing the last drops of their sanity. Caesar, or rather what is left of him, rushes deep into the catacombs, where another traveler has stumbled upon a rare chest. Larry is delighted to have found a very rare room full of treasures that will provide him with a comfortable existence. He happily says that now he is rich, free, and that upgraded skills and a new life await him. Unaware of the giant creature approaching, he joyfully shouts that he can finally change his fate. Having allowed the tragic curtain to close on this bloody situation, let us move forward a few hours to an entertainment establishment. Chester sincerely thanks his comrade and asks him to become his boss, saying that from now on, he will always follow him. Vincent says he can't always be this cool, and Chester remembers his ambitious words he said recently. Vincent smiles and says that he was just pretending to be cool at that moment to impress his opponent. Chester replies that he doesn't believe it, because after listening to those words, he realized that not everything is lost in his life, and he has goals. Vincent asks Chester what his goals are, to which he states that he is the best support in the world. He also states that his goal now will be to truly take the title of Support King in order to be an indispensable member of the squad. Vincent analyzes his comrade and realizes that he has a dexterity of 2 and a luck of 1, which means that he survives on the battlefield only by a miracle. Chester says they can make a great team because he will always be empowering Vincent, but Vincent cuts him off. He says that what he would most like is for Chester to stop going into the abyss, which comes as a real shock to him. Vincent reflects that a support that cannot stand up for itself is very unreliable and will only lead to an empty life. Not knowing how to explain what was happening, he decides to make a generous gesture and passes on the offer to Chester. As a gesture of goodwill, he gives him 1,000 magic crystals, saying that this will last for a long time, so Chester should not go into the abyss anymore. Chester understands the sad reality and says he has no questions about why Vincent does what he does. After this, determination overwhelms him again, and he says that he still would not like to continue living like trash, and does not want to be looked down upon even after death. Vincent mentally praises Bard's determination and asks him how he can help others if he cannot protect himself. Chester says that the microphone can be held in one hand, after which Vincent summons the sword of the warrior who died because of Chester. At that moment, he plunges it into the table next to the Bard, to demonstrate the seriousness of his intentions. Rising to his feet, he says that from what he knows about bards, the profession is a balance between physical and magical strength. He also states that now is the time to learn how to handle a sword, and thus repay the man who saved him at the cost of his life. Chester also rises to his feet and grabs the hilt of his sword, saying that he doesn't need crystals as a reward for what he's done. Vincent commends his spirit and says that in that case they should give the crystals to the families of that healer and warrior to honor their memory. He also states that they will earn even more crystals in the future, which motivates Chester to achieve even greater success. Meanwhile, an unknown group of people continues to analyze the vibrations coming from the gates of the abyss. The unknown girl says that after the incident under the Red Moon, a small detachment was sent out and found the corpses of the Blood Oath team. She also reports that the leader Caesar was heavily infected and completely demonized, and that the bodies of several outsiders were found. The girl claims that Larry, who was recently declared the team's killer in another incident, the invasion of the Abyss, was found among the dead bodies. She adds that the body was wearing top-notch gear when it was discovered, meaning he fought the mutated Caesar and lost. One of the employees asks his partner if this man is the only survivor, to which the girl replies that there was no one else there. Another employee wonders if their plan has now failed completely, to which his comrade replies that Caesar is a useless dog. Meanwhile, the scene moves to a government hospital called Miracle Picnic. At first glance, this is an ordinary hospital where nothing suspicious happens, but very soon the situation changes. Doctors walk along the corridors with their patients, talking to each other about diagnoses and future treatment plans. Unfortunately, in the general carelessness, one of the patients was left unattended, who apologizes to his deceased relatives. Holding a strange key in his hands, he says that he has no choice left. After a few moments, the key rises into the air and begins to emit a strange, dark, and ominous energy. The energy quickly spreads throughout the hospital, creating a portal and summoning very dangerous creatures. Creatures filled with dark energy begin to attack passersby near the hospital, who immediately run away, wondering what is happening. The most knowledgeable residents understand that the situation is becoming critical, as a portal to the abyss has been opened. In a moment, almost the entire hospital disappears, and in its place there remains a huge funnel, radiating a mysterious tension. Somewhere nearby, a monster from the abyss begins to destroy the houses of peaceful residents, and several children try to get out of there. These children run away from the giant creature, only narrowly avoiding becoming victims of its giant jaws. It quickly becomes clear that these children are Vincent and his little sister, whom he tried his best to protect. Little Vincent falls to the ground, unable to withstand the powerful shockwave caused by the monster's strike. The last thing he sees is his little sister's body falling in front of the giant monster, begging for help. Luckily, it turns out to be just a bad dream, and the protagonist jumps up in his bed in fury, trying to look around. Cold sweat breaks out on his body, but he quickly realizes that all of this was just a dream. Lying on the bed, he realizes that it was just a dream, but the anxiety in his heart does not subside for a second. After a while, he grabs his phone and realizes that today is a special date, since he had agreed with his sister that he would visit her. To give his dear little sister a pleasant surprise, he decides to first stop by the store and buy her favorite flowers. After greeting the flower seller, he asks her to pick a beautiful bouquet for him, and the girl guesses that he is going to see his sister. Vincent says that he was late because he had to meet someone, after which the saleswoman is happy for Vincent's sister. After all, she has such a good brother. She also compliments his new hairstyle. He replies that he was just passing by and met a friend who works in a hairdresser's. As soon as the girl collects a beautiful bouquet, he says that he will gladly help her carry it out so that she does not have to carry heavy things. Immediately after this, he goes outside and sees a huge number of police special forces vehicles heading in a direction familiar to him. The girl wonders where all the patrol cars rushing to the hospital come from. Vincent feels incredibly anxious and understands that he must get there as soon as possible, since his sister is in this hospital. Without another word, he takes off with his incredible agility and increased strength. Having upgraded himself to this level, he no longer needs to move like normal people. He can now jump from building to building. Moments later, he finds himself at a giant portal and hears the voices of police officers trying to clear out the area. He wonders why the Abyss Gate appeared here, as it usually doesn't appear so chaotically. A few moments later, he jumps down and finds a policeman who has been trying to lead ordinary people away from the danger zone all this time. Looking at another civilian, the police officer says that civilians have been ordered to evacuate, and the passage is blocked. However, as soon as he meets the main character's eyes, it becomes clear that this man had better keep calm. He lets him pass. He only looks with some regret at Vincent, who continues to approach the dangerous portal. The policeman's partner asks him what the hell he's doing, because peaceful residents must not be allowed through under any circumstances. The police officer says that this guy could look like the other people who came in, with whom he does not match in any case. Vincent continues to say his sister's name, saying that this time he won't be late in helping. Once inside, he says that the gates created another space inside the hospital, much larger than the area of the entire building. Looking around, he realizes that it is quite empty here, which means that the squad of career changers was here even before his arrival. He also discovers an empty potion container and realizes that ordinary fighters cannot afford such expensive items. After a few moments, he decides to use the skill of creating a regeneration potion in order to place it in such a large, convenient bottle. He puts this potion into his inventory, realizing that this dungeon will not be easy, so any supplies will be very useful. After walking forward for several dozen meters, he finds himself at a fork in the road and tries to figure out which direction is best for him to move in. To ensure that his decision is not completely random, he decides to use his keen observation skills to track down some details. The system tells him that he will not be able to return once he has chosen a path, and he understands that he must approach this choice as carefully as possible. Vincent takes the torches, saying that without them he doesn't know how long it will take to get to the end. He also realizes that he doesn't have time to think about it, since ordinary people can't last long here, and he needs to act extremely quickly. Rushing forward, he comes across a red carpet on which there are no traces of other people, which means that Vincent got here first. Looking back, he realizes that the way back has been swallowed by darkness, and now he will not be able to return under any circumstances. After some time, he takes out a special object, saying that if he finds himself in a labyrinth, he will be able to mark places he has already been to, so as not to get lost. The system notifies him that he has used the Eye of Argos, and he commands the item to show him a map of the area. The system quickly disappoints the protagonist by telling him that it is impossible to display the map outside of this area. Vincent calmly says that it is now clear why people mark the road with sword scratches, because the device does not work in this area. A huge number of tentacles begin to appear behind him, and he realizes that he has entered a trapped room. However, after thinking a little, he realizes that he did not hear any sounds of extraneous mechanisms, which means that this room is something else. He also notes that it is eerily quiet here, while a strange spirit-like creature appears behind him. All this time, this spirit did not make a single sound, and only at the moment when he thought that he would be able to kill Vincent, he decided to swing his giant scythe. Luckily, Vincent manages to react to this treacherous blow in time, and jumps to the side, forcing the spirit to plunge its scythe into the stone floor. Jumping to the side, he realizes that he has a perfect window of opportunity to finish off his opponent, who must pull the weapon out of the ground. He makes a lightning-fast dash, simultaneously striking with his pumped-up dagger, cutting the spirit in half at once. Unfortunately, this blow has no effect, and the system notifies him that such blows will be ineffective. Vincent once again jumps away from his opponent to give himself room to maneuver, and realizes that the spirit has physical immunity. Meanwhile, Revenant lets out a loud cry to inflict damage on his opponent. The system notifies the protagonist that he has been given the deafness status, and he really does stop hearing any sounds. Vincent realizes that he acted recklessly and did not sufficiently assess the danger of this place. After quickly analyzing his opponent, he realizes that he is facing exactly the monster that appears in the Abyss of Rules. He briefly dives into his memories and rolls back in time 3 years to when he first found himself in such an abyss. The sortie seemed suspiciously quiet to him, but he had the constant feeling that someone was watching him. Suddenly he discovers strange statues that look quite creepy, as they have dark smiles frozen on their faces. Vincent turns away from them and realizes that these are not some kind of monsters, but just a bunch of creepy statues that pose no threat. As he continues to collect crystals, he reflects on the fact that none of them should go to waste, because his future career depends on it. Hearing a strange sound, he turns around again to see if he imagined that someone ran among these statues. One can only imagine the surprise and horror of the protagonist when he discovers that these statues have become much closer to him, and their position has changed. Vincent jumps back and wonders what is happening, because just a few seconds ago these statues were just a pile of stones. At that time, a colleague comes to his aid, who advises not to turn around and says that these are demonic crying statues. He also states that one should not turn one's back to these creatures or blink when looking at them. He also claims that the demons of the abyss follow a certain logic in their actions, and the higher the level, the stricter it is. The scavenger states that these creatures are very dangerous opponents, but while they are being looked at, they are petrified. Vincent wonders what he should do, to which his comrade replies that he should slowly back away and not blink until they are out of the room. All this time, they look back and feel incredible tension, because they do not see what is behind them. Vincent also fails to notice a pebble lying right under his feet, causing him to slip, inevitably losing visual contact with his opponent. Not only does Vincent himself stop looking at these demonic creatures for a while, but his colleague also turns around to find out what happened. The demonic statues immediately take advantage of this and rush forward to devour their victims in the blink of an eye. Luckily, the scavenger doesn't get confused, and immediately rushes forward to pull the lever that will allow him to escape from these creatures. It's hard to imagine what would have happened if they had been trapped in this place without a way to escape quickly. The stone slab descends at great speed, thereby ensuring the safety of the protagonist and his comrade. Vincent realizes how lucky he is to be with such a comrade, because otherwise he would have died here. Exhausted, he falls to the ground, thanking his comrade, while the latter mentions that normal attacks do no damage to these statues at all. He also states that despite his inexperience as a fighter, he is very strong in terms of knowledge of monster behavior. Vincent returns to reality and realizes that he is no worse than some career changers, and must find a way to deal with the enemy. He also states that if this monster is immune to physical attacks, then magical attacks should have some effect. Finding himself in a more advantageous position, he decides to use the Big Bang skill to paralyze the enemy. However, as soon as he attempts to fire a magic shot, his hand suddenly begins to act strangely. Before Vincent can react to this incident in time, the magical energy in his hand explodes. Vincent realizes that he can no longer even rely on fire powers, despite the fact that this is the only type of magical damage he can inflict. For a moment he wonders what he should do in such a case, if he cannot fight the enemy in the usual way. Quite quickly he comes up with one ability he has left and realizes that it might be his chance to win. Once again, he dodges his opponent's attack and tries to think through his next move. He notes that time is short and the monster is physically invulnerable, but its attacks are mostly focused on one type of damage. While waiting for the moment when he can return to the fight, he realizes that the logic of this creature is very strange. Revenant makes an off-balance attack with his scythe, but it also misses thanks to Vincent's agility. Unfortunately, spirits do not know fatigue, so the opponent is preparing to attack him again with another barrage of attacks. Vincent takes out his dagger and blocks some of the scythe's attacks, still frantically trying to figure out what the creature's weak point is. To get a hint, he decides to use his Eye of Insight and find at least something. After a few more dodges, he realizes that the monster only materializes after it makes an attack. From his point of view, before the sickle swings, the creature loses its defense against physical attacks. Seizing the moment, he rushes forward, preparing to launch a series of quick and accurate attacks. His theory is indeed confirmed, and the ghost takes a fair amount of damage from Vincent's bloody attacks. Immediately after this, the spirit begins to make very strange sounds, signaling that the creature is dying. After a few moments, it dissolves into thin air, and Vincent assumes that he has managed to deal with the problem. However, the problem only begins to mount, because after a few seconds, a strange energy sphere appears in the air again, from which a silhouette is formed. Over time, this silhouette begins to take shape more and more, and Vincent realizes that he is now facing a new enemy. In fact, this enemy is the second form of the previous spirit, possessing a greater range of skills. A strange energy begins to emanate from this creature, which it uses to charge its attacks and body. Vincent realizes that he recently lost his hearing, and now he can't even see his enemy properly. At first, he considers turning to his clone, but abandons the idea because it would take too much energy. The monster quickly emerges from the shadows and launches a dual attack, which Vincent somehow manages to block. The protagonist realizes that it is too difficult for him to fight this enemy, and that he cannot cope with him, even with such a set of attributes. At the same time, he activates the super regeneration skill to recover and get additional chances. The system informs him that the deafness condition has been eliminated, and all lacerations have been instantly healed. A greenish glow begins to emanate from Vincent's body, and this stops the cruel ghost for a while. Vincent immediately notices this, and guesses that in the second phase, this creature is afraid of light, and even a weak light will not allow it to come closer. At that moment, he realizes how he should act, and sets his fists on fire to create more light. The ghost naively assumes that his opponent will try to throw a fireball at him, and begins to laugh prematurely. In fact, Vincent is well aware that his strength lies in not attacking his opponent with fire spells. Instead, he directs the fiery energy directly into himself, causing his body to become engulfed in flames. In a few moments, he himself turns into a massive source of light, ready to disperse all shadows. Ignoring the burning effect, he happily notes that he finally has the ability to see clearly in the dark. The frightened ghost immediately begins to run away from it, so as not to receive serious damage from light sources. Vincent claims that his opponent is afraid of flames because his life force is contained in darkness. He also understands that for an ordinary magician who does not know how to cast spells on his body, it would be quite difficult here, but Vincent should now be able to handle it without any problems. He lunges forward with Ghost Rush and grabs the ghost, saying that he himself will become the fire that destroys it. Grabbing his opponent as tightly as possible, he decides to use his Big Bang skills by directing himself. The ghost does not have time to return from such a spell and becomes a victim of the main character's ingenuity. Vincent jumps to the side, and his outer clothing is instantly wiped off, leaving him half naked. The system notifies him that the monster was defeated, but his health would have been critically reduced, and doctors would have been needed. The system also tells him that his hand was badly burned, and he cannot hold a weapon, to which he replies that now he will have to wait for regeneration. The burning body of the ghost falls to the ground, and Vincent tries to put it out so that he will have materials to recycle. A moment later, he summons his deity, who pulls the island of ghosts into his vast abyss. As a reward, Vincent receives another pet, which is perfect for executing enemies and restoring health. The system also says that the artifact cannot be exchanged, since it is tied to the soul. Vincent, realizing that this is a very useful skill, especially if used in a battle with a large number of not very strong opponents. The distinctive feature of this skill is that if the target is not killed, the wearer will receive the same amount of damage. Vincent realizes that this skill must be used with extreme caution, and then uses the super regeneration skill. In addition to vitality, this skill restores the protagonist's outerwear, who is filled with determination and sets off to save his sister. Meanwhile, somewhere in the depths of the dungeon, one of the monsters begins to crush captured people who were brutally killed. By cutting up the unfortunate captives, he separates the necessary body parts to feast on later. Luckily, Valerie survived and managed to avoid this fate, but she is now in a rather dangerous situation. In order to distract the giant enemy, who is a deadly orc, she throws the bottle away. The crack of the glass bottle causes the creature to turn back and go to investigate to check what happened. Valerie gets some time to get her bearings and decide where she needs to go. The huge problem for this girl is that she is paralyzed in the lower part of her body, so her legs cannot walk. Having climbed out of the pile of giant bags, the girl looks around, then rubs her bruised head. She continues to look around and discovers a small teddy bear lying on the cold floor and decides to take it. She crawls up to him pretty quickly, saying that she must definitely find her brother and never let anyone hurt him. Unfortunately, she doesn't have time to notice how the giant monster returns to its lair, stepping on this bear. He also detects Valerie, instantly making it impossible for her to escape from such a gigantic creature. Before dealing with its victim, this creature lets out a loud and unpleasant roar that echoes throughout the dungeon. Valerie immediately tries to figure out what to do in this situation. But in reality, she has almost no options to save herself. Valerie understands this perfectly well and turns her last prayers to her brother to come to her and save her from this terrible monster. The giant figure swings his cleaver, completely oblivious to the mysterious silhouette that suddenly appears behind him. Moments later, a giant sword cuts into his skin, cutting through it as if it were soft plasticine. The mysterious warrior easily slices the giant monster in half with his equally impressive sword. Valerie watches this gigantic machine with surprise and horror, trying to understand how a person can even hold this sword in his hands. Valerie's savior is a warrior with a two-handed sword whose name has been lost in time. So from now on, we will simply refer to him as the Nameless Warrior.